Hey guys, it's Fletch. Welcome back to the Big Sky Tactical Channel here in Big Sky Country, also known as Montana. Southwest Montana, to be a little bit more specific. Today we're going to look at how to install the Magpul ASAP or Ambidextrous Sling attachment point. And it's just like most of the Magpul items, you know, they got a good marketing catch, you know, calling it the ASAP instead of just a sling attachment. But that's neither here nor there, pretty cool thing. But basically what you're going to be doing is you're going to be replacing your standard end plate, like this one here, with one like this. And it's ambidextrous, so what you would do is you would hook your sling in here. Typically something like this would be used for a one-point sling, but you know, so if you were using it, you know, left-handed or excuse me, right-handed, then you wanted to switch to left-handed, your retainer here slides from the left side or to the right side. So that's what we're going to be looking at today, and I'll do a product review on this later. Right now we're just going to be looking at how to install it. So give me a second here and we'll get set back up for how to do that. Alright, so some basic tools that you're going to need for this job. The first is a small pair of needle nose pliers. And you know, I used to be so uptight about stuff like this that you know, I would postpone doing this video until I had a chance to clean up these rusted pliers that my teenage boys left outside. But I think it's good sometimes, you know, to let people know, you know, you're a real person, just like other people out there that has teenage and preteen boys. And so, yeah, you're going to need a pair of needle nose pliers. I'd recommend a small screwdriver like this with a flat blade, and then you're also going to want a castle nut wrench, and or some of the companies make a armorer's tool that has the castle nut wrench in it as well. So that's what you're going to need. So starting out, what we're going to want to do is we're going to need to loosen the castle nut. So basically, if you look on your castle nut wrench, you've got 3 locking lugs here, 1, 2, 3, and you're just going to match those up, 1, 2, 3, on the castle nut here. So you just slide it on there. And if you've never broken the castle nut on your AR, this can be a little difficult and a little tedious. And obviously I've already got the ASAP mounted on here, so I have, you know, done this before, so it's going to be a little bit easier for me. But basically, you know, as you're looking at it like this, just with anything else, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So you're going to turn it to the left, and you're going to want to hold pressure on the end plate, whether it's your stock end plate like this, or in this case the ASAP I already have on there. But you're going to want to hold pressure on this end plate because there's a spring behind it if you're not aware. So we're just going to turn it here, turn the castle nut all the way out, and then we're going to very slowly let this end plate come out because there's a very small spring that is behind here, and that is the your rear receiver pin here. It holds the spring tension on that pin. Alright, right here is this little tiny spring, and that spring goes along the inside here, and it holds your detent pin here though for your upper and lower receiver. So right there, for those of you that don't know. And guys, those of you that are more advanced, you know, you've done more work on your AR, some of this may be excuse me, some of this may be a little bit rudimentary for you, and I apologize for that in advance, but I'd rather make my videos, excuse me, a little bit more too detailed to make sure that everyone gets what they need out of a video. So that's my philosophy. I understand it, I respect it if it doesn't work for you, but that's the way I do it, that's the way I make my videos. So, alright, now that we've got that loose, the next thing we want to do is we want to release the buffer here and take out the buffer and the spring. So, remember I showed you this screwdriver, so basically what you're going to want to do is push down. There's a retaining spring in there, and I'll give you a close-up of that in a minute, but take out your buffer and take out the spring. Alright, so right here is your buffer tube retention spring, and you can see that's spring loaded. If I push down on it, it'll go down in there. And basically you want to be careful that you don't lose that, because it will fall out once you screw your extension tube, the buffer tube. Once you screw that out of there, it will take the pressure off of there and that will fall out. So make sure you don't lose that. And then also your spring right here, you don't want to lose that either. So, all right. So now that we've got that out, we're turn it. And I'm being careful that I don't tip this so that the spring that's on the plate back here doesn't go shooting across the room. So right there is the spring. And there's a little pin that also rides in there as well. So I'm going to go ahead and take this out so I don't lose it. I'm going to set it right here. Okay, and then here is your buffer spring retaining pin is right here. So we're just going to take it out as well and set it aside. Now, inside of this hole, up against the pin here, there's a little cap that rides in there. And what I found with mine, as long as I leave it like that, it's going to stay in there fine and there's no issues. But just be aware of that when you go to put it back together, and make sure that the little cap that goes on the end of the spring is still there. Alright, so typically this is what you would have in there. And you can see that this has a little key right here. And what that key does is it rides along this slot on the bottom of your extension tube, your buffer tube. So it goes like that right there. Well, when you use your ASAP, because they didn't want to have to make a commercial version and a mil-spec version, what they did was they make these little keys like this, and basically what you're going to do is you're going to take that key and set it down in there like that once you have it installed on there, so that it will ride in this slot on the bottom of your buffer tube. Alright, so now that we've got that done, what we're going to do is we're going to slide our new plate on there, and we're going to just reverse the process of what we just did. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the retaining pin spring here, slide that back in the end like that, and when you put the end plate back on, you want to make sure that you don't bend this spring over and bind it. Excuse me. So what I found worked best for me, and guys, this isn't hard, but it is a little bit tedious, so I'm just going to tell you that ahead of time. So what you're going to have to do while you do this is kind of line everything up, and as best you can apply steady, even pressure against the end of it, and that will pretty well hold it on there in the right place. Now, your castle nut is still on the end there, so that's not an issue. So the next thing you want to do is start screwing the extension tube back in. And again, you know, basics, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, right? Don't make it any more difficult than it has to be. And what you're looking for here is you want to screw your extension tube back in just until it comes over the edge of your extension tube spring and retaining pin. And because I don't want to lose that spring for my retaining pin, what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to just finger tighten and walk up this castle nut here onto the back side of my ASAP plate, because I don't want to lose that spring. And I don't want to have to try to hold it while I'm putting the buffer tube spring back in there. So here's my buffer tube and my buffer tube spring. Simply slide it back in there. And while I'm holding pressure on that, I'm going to take the spring and the pin, just put them back together like that, drop it down in the hole, push down on it, and release the buffer tube. Alright, and as you can see, the buffer right now is over the retaining pin, so it's holding it in place, but it's still not screwed in far enough. So what I'm going to do is just kind of back off the castle nut just far enough that I can get another full turn on the extension tube. Alright, so I hit right there, and so I know that for mine, what I need to do is just to press down on that just a little bit so that I can turn it the last little bit. Alright, so there we are. It's turned in far enough now that if the buffer tube here now is over the edge of the retaining pin down in there. Alright, so there you are. There's a good shot of it. The edge of the buffer tube is just over the edge of the retaining pin there, so it holds it in place. So when I push that buffer tube back, that spring and pin don't come flying out of there. Alright, now the last part of what I need to do is to put the little key. Alright, so we're going to put the little key right in that notch right there. And Magpul supplies you with 2 key links, one for a commercial tube and one for a mil-spec tube. Alright, so right down in here, take your pin and drop it right down in there. Alright, so one thing I wanted to stress real quick before we move on is, in order to get this little key in here, right there, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to loosen your castle nut. Earlier what we did, when we screwed in the extension tube here, when we screwed that in, we walked this castle nut here up against the end plate, which in this case is the ASAP. So we put the castle nut up against the ASAP plate so that we didn't lose the little spring in here, right? That runs and holds your rear retaining pin in place, okay? So before you're going to be able to slide your little key in there, you're going to have to raise this up a little bit, and then you're going to have to hold down, like with your thumb right here, hold the ASAP down and make sure that the spring is not bound up in there, and then set it down in there, and then just use your fingers and tighten the castle nut up again. The last step is going to be just tightening down the castle nut again up against the end plate, which in this case is the ASAP. So we're going to use our castle nut wrench slide it in there and make sure we have it, you know, torqued down pretty good. The spec calls for 40 pounds per square inch on that, and they do not recommend that you use Loctite or something else on there. But what you might want to do, and you know, it's kind of a quote-unquote hallmark of a quality, of a quality, or you know, mil-spec rifle, is that you would take a punch and drift just a little bit of the ASAP plate here into this cavity right there, and that will keep it from loosening in the field as you are using it. So I audited my video to make sure that it makes sense, and let me get this to focus real quick. There we go. And if you look right here in the castle nut, there's a little indentation there, and then over here on the other side there's another one similar to this. And what you're going to do is you take a punch and drift a little bit of the plate into here, into this area, and that will stake the castle nut in place, and which is also a part of the mil-spec process. So again, you would just take a punch and drift a little bit of it into that recess right there, and then that will keep your castle nut here from working loose at a later time. And I also wanted to just kind of show you, here's the stock end plate that came on my M&P 15, and you can see right there, you see right there where they drifted a little bit of it in there, right there, and then again right here where they drifted a little bit to stake it in place. So that would be the last step. And basically all we have to do now is just do a little function check, make sure that the retaining pin, rear retaining pin, slides back and forth but it doesn't come out. So we know that that's working properly. And push the buffer in, and then make sure the spring for that is working properly, and it is, so we know that that's good. So we would basically just reconnect our upper receiver to the lower receiver here, and we're golden. For those of you that are a little bit more experienced with firearms, this may seem a little bit basic to you, but for those of you that maybe it's not, I just wanted to also add this in real quick. Whenever you're done working on a firearm, you always want to do a function check and make sure that everything works the way that it's supposed to. So first, make sure that the safety still works. Take it off safe, put it on fire, cock it. Okay, so that works. Make sure your bolt hold open still works. The bolt open still works. Release it. Fire. Recock it. Put it on safe. Doesn't work. Put it on safe. It does. Fire. So just do a full function check on your weapon whenever you're done working on it, because the last thing you want is to have an issue. So something that you just kind of misoverlooked or whatever when you're putting your weapon back together, and you know, when you need it the most, it doesn't work. So just wanted to add that in there for those of you, you know, maybe this is one of the first major projects that you're going to be doing. That is the Magpul ASAP or ASAP ambidextrous plate. Thanks for watching today, guys. I greatly appreciate it. If you have any questions about the install or anything in particular, please feel free to leave your questions or comments below, and I'll help you out as I can. Thanks for joining me today. God bless.